Smallholder farmers are most affected by this slow onset hazard. We all know that climate change is expected to increase frequency, severity, duration, and a special extent of droughts. Those hit the hardest are always the most vulnerable, but no one should be left behind. We know that drought starts as a natural phenomenon, and that drought will indeed come. We cannot ignore this, and we have the responsibility to protect the people and the environment. We need to shift from a reactive mindset to a proactive one. We need to prepare, predict, plan together to stop drought becoming famine. One actor cannot alone achieve this. We need to work together across countries, UN agencies, NGOs, academia, indigenous and local communities, private sector, including family farmers and more. I am pleased to see all of you here in this room to bring together the knowledge and experience from across the world. Today is a celebration of our cooperation, of the way forward that we are already working together in this COP. FAO, UNCCD, WMO, and the Global Water Partnership have been closely working together in supporting countries on drought preparedness. Synergies have been built among initiatives, including the Drought Initiative, the Integrated Drought Management Program, and the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, WASAC. As you know, FAO is co-leading the UN environment in the implementation of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030. The decade will provide a further opportunity for all of us to work together and accelerate progress toward achieving land degradation neutrality and drought resistance. The way to drought preparedness is still ahead, but we are demonstrating and committed that we can indeed deliver as one. The capacities and experiences are already present. Let us bring them together across sectors and borders. FAO will continue to put at the disposal of the countries its experience, methodologies, and tools on integrated drought management, sustainable agricultural practices, and sustainable land, soil, and water management. Let me finish with an anecdote. We are often told that FAO is not talking to the average people, that sometimes they cannot understand the methodologies, the tools, the ideas, especially small farmers. And I was sent by the institution to discuss with a meeting in the Vatican with all the faith. It was an interfaith meeting. You know, all the religions presented there. And I was trying to explain to them why the UN is fighting for the idea that no one should be left behind. Leaving no one behind, we said. I finished, and I was prepared for a lot of questions. And then a very old priest from the Scandinavian region stood up and said, "Thank you, Mr. Castro. For us, people of faith, it's easy to understand what you are trying to explain. For the Christians, it has 2,000 years. It's the Good Shepherd parable. That one that goes to look for the missing lamb." So we need to do more of that. How we talk to all the sectors, to all the people, to all agencies, how we translate what we are doing and what needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. Thank you for the inspiring words on making FAO available. And one thing that Mr. Castro is very modest, he didn't mention that he has been Minister of Energy and Environment of Costa Rica in 2 terms, Minister of Foreign Affairs once, so he knows the politics, I think. And how many COPs have you attended, Mr. Castro? I think maybe a lot of them.
Quite a few.
Exactly. So this comes from experience. It's a very inspiring word that we got. I am pleased to invite Ambassador Howard Bumsey, the chair of the Global Water Partnership, to address this opening. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks very much. Eduardo, I'll speak from here if,
Yes, absolutely.
if my microphone's working. It seems to be. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thanks, Renee, for your plaudits for the UNCCD and the Government of India for bringing us together. This is, for me, a return to this convention after a long absence, and like you, Renee, I'm very struck by the momentum that has been gathering in recent times on all of the questions that UNCCD deals with, and on none more than on drought. I think it's really clear, not just from this special day today, but from the context of the rest of the discussions that I've seen this week, that drought policy is now on the move. And with that in mind, I hope that the decision of the COP on drought will reflect that, and maybe it's time for a return at high level to the question of drought policy. There was a meeting, I think in 2013, at high level that launched a number of activities that I'll mention in a minute, and my view is that if we were to convene maybe in a year or so, but certainly before the next COP, another high-level meeting on drought policy, that could provide a substantial boost to this momentum that we've seen. And one of the reasons, I think, for the momentum that we've witnessed is that we've seen real partnership on drought preparedness and drought action. That, for me, coming from the climate world and now water, is very refreshing and welcome. I think, for example, in water, there are a whole lot of bodies doing very similar, potentially complementary things, but they're not always doing them as collaboratively as they might. And yet, in the area of drought, I think we see the opposite. We see a whole series, streams of activity that are complementary and are working together. For my organisation, the Global Water Partnership, we put particular effort into the integrated drought management program together with 34 organisations in total, and I'm very pleased that that's made contributions in providing tools and frameworks and principles that help countries deal with drought, and that it's complementary with WASAG, as Renee mentioned. It's complementary with the Drought Initiative, and from UNCCD, we're now all working in a very close and collaborative way, and there's plenty of evidence around you that is a very positive development. But what is all this activity about fundamentally? I'm not a drought expert, though I come from a country which has experienced increasingly severe droughts, and we all know, as Renee said, that climate change will ensure that the severity of the droughts we experience can only increase until we finally globally deal with the menace of climate change. Drought may be fundamentally just a reduction in rainfall, but it has the most profound effects beyond that obvious point. And the Deputy Minister pointed to the impacts, the first impacts on agriculture and food, but the energy systems of most countries are going to be affected. Most renewable energy around the world is hydro, and obviously drought has a huge impact, and we've seen in Zambia, for example, fundamental differences to energy policy have come about as a result of drought. Coal and many renewables technologies are big users of water, so when a drought is impending, and when it continues, it's inevitable that the energy sector of a country is going to be affected. Industry, another huge user of water, is also, in most countries, going to be impacted by drought. And beyond these obvious points, the social costs from the despair that drought brings people are enormous. And all of these factors can really only be dealt with effectively if there is effective drought preparedness. And I don't think preparedness quite captures what needs to be done in countries to get ready to manage drought actively. It's really about improving capacity. It's about fixing a system-wide response to what we know will be coming. We now have very strong evidence that careful planning that embraces all of the affected sectors can help alleviate the really severe impacts of drought. But yet we still don't do it. We don't do it well enough, and in so many cases, almost all in fact, drought comes as a crisis, and we resort to crisis activities. We have to distribute aid and assistance in different forms, when if we'd planned carefully, that activity could be reduced. This is a mystery in many cases, and in each country where these failures occur, there are different reasons for them. But publication today, which has been put together by GWP, the World Bank, and the World Meteorological Organization, does help unlock some of the answers to why, as a matter generally of political economy, the capacity building that's required for effective drought management doesn't take place. While I'm introducing documents that are being launched today, let me just wave around another one, which is GWP's new strategy, and to point to a couple of relevant aspects of that. And the first is that we do focus in there on the task of building capacity, in other words, of effective preparedness for drought. I won't go into the details, but you will find them in our strategy. And we identify effective drought management as one of the tasks that we will do, we will pay attention to in collaboration with all of the organisations that are working together to deal with this increasingly urgent problem. And no less than this convention, which we're attending actually in a senior representational way for the first time. It will not be the last. We look forward to much closer collaboration with UNCCD and all of our other partners in the interests of the countries we all serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bamsey, and I think you put it very, very clearly, the importance of the integration of all sectors, and thanks for raising the paper on the benefits of action and the cost of inaction. And that leads us to invite our lead economist in the panel, Dr. Jean-Claude Bidogueza from the Africa Risk Capacity. It would be interesting to hear from you, and I would like to recognize now in the panel the presence of our Executive Secretary of the UNCCD, Dr. Ibrahim Thiaw, that joined us. Thank you very much. Your presence is an honor for this panel. We would like to hear from Dr. Bidogueza now.
Thank you very much, Director. Yeah, Excellency, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to represent the African Risk Capacity and the ARC Director General, Mr. Mohamed Bervogi, who due to other previous sets commitments could not be here today. So on my behalf and on his behalf, I would like to join the previous speakers to add ARC voice to express our sincere gratitude to Mr. Ibrahim Thio for having inviting us. And further, I would like to commend the Indian hospitality in this magnificent city of Great Noida. Thank you to the government of India. And also, I'm very glad to have South African delegation here, Deputy Minister, High Commissioner. South Africa is the country that hosts the headquarters of African Risk Capacity. So as the name of this event indicates, this is the Drought Preparedness Day. That is an occasion to present and discuss the success, the challenge of the current tools, methodology, and the policy supporting drought preparedness. The African Risk Capacity has been glad to be invited to this event and to join other stakeholders, UN agency, government actors, civil society, academia, NGOs, and this is an opportunity for African Risk Capacity to share its experience, achievements, challenge, and to learn also from the experience and the best practice from other stakeholders. More importantly, the African Risk Capacity is looking forward on a stimulating debate to bring out knowledge and the best practice of implementing integrated drought management policy, strategy, and plans. Ladies and gentlemen, drought is the most pervasive hazard, natural or otherwise, accounted by smallholder farmers, which are the majority of the African population. Agriculture production in Africa is mainly a rain-fed agriculture, and it is affected by natural climate variability, and is likely to be significantly compromised by climate change through the higher incidence of droughts, flood, cyclone, and erratic rainfall, and the damaging high temperature. The damage and the losses from the recent cyclone Idai and Kenneth that hit East and Southern Africa have exacerbated affected country existing food security and destroying huge swath of agricultural land. Although the exact timing and magnitude are uncertain, but nowadays models can predict the weather events. As currently structured, the system for responding to natural disaster is not timely and equitable as it should, and could be with much of the costs borne by farmers and the vulnerable households. International assistance through the traditional appeals system is secured on largely at ad hoc basis after disaster strikes. Mostly arrive when lives and livelihoods are lost, assets are depleted, and the development gain reversed, forcing more people into chronic hunger, malnutrition, and the destitution across the continent. So with the foregoing context, African Risk Capacity emerged as an innovative risk financing mechanism structured to build better African country risk management system, not only unlocking critical and timely financing to support more efficient responses to disaster, but also helping countries better prepare, plan for the impact of climate change. To quickly respond to reduce the impact of natural disaster, the African Risk Capacity bundled its interventions in one ecosystem that comprise area warning through risk modeling, linked to contingency planning and the insurance mechanism. In only 5 years of business, of insurance business operations, the African risk capacity has been able to underwrite policies, insurance that provide drought insurance coverage that amounted to over $600 million. Over $59 million have been dispersed as payouts toward relief of over 2 million population and the 900 cattle in Mauritania, Senegal, Malawi, and Niger when those countries experience droughts that trigger payments. This month of September 2019, Senegal is going to receive from the African risk capacity $22 million as a payout due to a bad run from distribution that has triggered insurance payments. The amount will scale up social protection to provide relief to the affected population and cattle. So I'm very much looking forward to this dialogue, and I wish all a fruitful Drought Preparedness Day workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bigodeza, and I will retain your speech for the records. And it's my honor to invite Dr. Ojai Unver, representing the UN Water. Ojai is the UN Water Vice Chair, and he will address this opening of the Drought Preparedness Day. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address you on this occasion that will allow us to better prepare for drought. I'm delighted to be here and learn about so many important initiatives. On behalf of UN Water, I would like to extend our deepest appreciation to the UN Water member UNCCD for making this topic prominent at COP14. We know that water scarcity already affects every continent. Water use has been growing globally at more than twice the rate of population increase in the last century, and more regions are reaching the limit at which water services can be sustainably delivered. We need to prepare for when the situation worsens, as populations and the demand for water grow, and as the effects of climate change intensify. Last year, UN Water released the SDG 6 Synthesis Report 2018 on water and sanitation, where we described the global progress on the goal and went in depth to look at the individual targets, among them water scarcity. The overall picture is bleak, with the conclusion that the world is not on track to achieve SDG 6, the Sustainable Development Goal on water and sanitation. The report also showed that 31 countries experience water stress between 25 and 70%, and that 22 countries are above 70%, and thereby seriously stressed. 11 countries are already above 100%. The world is facing a grave climate and water emergency, and that world's most vulnerable are bearing the brunt. We know that for each degree of global warming, there will be a 20% reduction of water resources for 70% of the global population. In 2030, that corresponds to 600 million people whose health and livelihoods will be at risk. We need to act now. In a little less than 2 weeks, world leaders will gather at the United Nations headquarters to boost action. This is good news. We know that the world is off track, but we also know that we can speed up progress. The question is not if it is possible, but how. I would like to offer 3 thoughts on this. One is about shifting perspectives. At the high-level political forum on sustainable development in July this year, UN Water released a policy brief on climate change and water. We stress the urgency of improving water management, ensuring transboundary cooperation, and rethinking financing. But perhaps one of the most thought-provoking pieces is how to move from looking at water only as a threat, but consider it as part of the solution. Indeed, proactive drought policies and drought risk management can build greater societal resilience to the effects of drought and reduce the need for emergency responses. But this requires a fundamental shift in the way droughts are perceived and managed. Overall, climate change and its exacerbation of floods and droughts necessitates a more adaptive approach to water management for countries and societies to be able to cope with the increasing uncertainty. Number 2 is about making commitments based on reliable data. Few will argue against the idea